Hello, I'm going to show you how to create a super smelter that has minimal impact on a server compared to the standard sort of design involving 2 minecarts on a loop. It's a 15 furnace design that involves no minecarts but instead uses lots and lots of hoppers to distribute all the materials. It has an input chest at the top, a fuel chest just below it, and an output chest at the bottom. It keeps every furnace full of fuel and equally distributes the input into each of the furnaces for processing. Before we begin though, this design is only suitable as a permanent installation, like at your base. Also, you have to commit to using wood slabs of your choosing as fuel, all of the same type. Bear in mind, giant spruce trees are the best to farm. If you don't like this idea, you may want to consider the original design I am basing it from, but in my opinion it has greater drawbacks than this design. I will show it to you at the end of the video and explain more. I'm going to start building it now. Everything you need for it is in the video description. We start by placing our output chests and then hoppers going into that output chest. You can make it less furnaces if you like, but the maximum size this design can do is 15 furnaces, so we're going to place as many hoppers as that, leading into the chest and then each hopper in front of it. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Then a furnace on each of these. As you're making this, if you make any mistakes, have to knock off any blocks, check the hoppers. Try not to make any mistakes because that's the easiest way to do this. But if you do, check the hoppers, especially for the fuel and for the input, because something like a bit of redstone might go into what's they called again, furnace, and it will stop the whole thing from working. But anyway, you've got your hoppers and your furnaces down now. We've next got to lay some hoppers at the back of each of these furnaces going into them. So we just need to do that. It uses a lot of hoppers, this design. But like I said before, it ends up having a lot less impact on servers. Plus you don't have the noise. So once you've laid those hoppers, you've then got to go over here, build up to just above that level, and then have hoppers going in this way towards that block. So you start there and then have each hopper going into the one in front of it. And if you don't know, you've got to crouch while doing this, otherwise you just open up each hopper. So you extend that to the end and then go one more over. So that's the hoppers for fuel. Now we have to do the hoppers for the input. So that's a hopper at the top going down into each one of the furnaces. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and I started counting at the wrong number because that should be 15. Anyway, we then do the same thing again at this end. We extend up just above those hoppers and then have these hoppers all pointing this way, forwards the way that I'm looking now anyway. And we do the same thing at the end. We go over by one. And now we can start placing our other chests. So, just go up to here and we place the input chest here, and we'll make it a double, so we'll put one there as well. Now we could just place the output chest directly on top of that, but what I'm going to do instead is just place a couple more hoppers so we can place the chest at the front, make it look a little bit neater. So I'll do that now. Get rid of those blocks. And now we've got all our hoppers and chests placed. So next thing we've got to do is to have something to regulate the input to each of the furnaces. So we take off that block there, put a redstone comparator at the end. That redstone comparator's got to go into a block, so we put that there, and then a redstone torch on the side. A block here, and now redstone repeater pointing this way. So that's what that should look like. And once you've done that, you've then got to lay a row of blocks all, holding down the wrong key, there, all along this way. And then redstone on top of each of them. Alright, I extended this a little bit too far. It's only supposed to go as far as the furnaces, no further than that. So this is fine. And next thing we've got to do now is to place a block. It could go either here or here, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to place it here. Another redstone comparator. That redstone comparator's got to go into a block again. Redstone torch, and then lay some blocks all the way down here. No, not down, across. Getting there, come on. Right. And then extend that round here to this bit here where that redstone torch is. Then we lay redstone. Oops. There we go. And we will need a repeater because the redstone signal will stop. Doesn't really matter where you put that, but you know, halfway or towards the end. And then extend onto the block that has the redstone torch. Okay, and this is the whole thing constructed. The first thing you've got to do before you start using it is to fuel it. Now, unfortunately, one of the compromises that we've had to make with this design, considering that we want all the product to flow through, is that the fuel will be used slightly unevenly in each of the furnaces. So the only way to account for that is to get rid of the circuit that basically regulates the fuel. So that's why that hasn't got that. You put fuel in, it will just fill up each of the furnaces one at a time, gradually until the whole thing is full. But if you spend a little bit of time at the beginning filling it up, then it will still carry on distributing fuel evenly between the furnaces and making sure each one of them is always full. And the total capacity of this thing is round about 200 wood slabs. So it's a little bit of a pain to fill up for the very first time, but once you've done that, it's never going to run out of fuel unless you just, use it for ages and ages, well after this chest of fuel is empty. If you've got it in a situation where all the hoppers are full of fuel, and this chest is full of fuel, and you fill up this chest once it's getting empty again, all the furnaces are always going to have plenty of fuel, and it will always be distributed evenly. So I'm going to do that now. The quickest way to fill it up with fuel for the very first time is to go into each one of these furnaces, put a stack of fuel in, and then go round here, go into this hopper, fill it all with fuel, and the one above it, fill that with fuel as well. Do that all the way along. It ends up being a lot quicker than just putting all the fuel into that chest and waiting for it to disperse. So I'm going to go and do that now, and then we'll resume when we're ready to test it. So once you've filled up both of these rows of hoppers with wood slabs, and these three leading from the fuel chest and the fuel chest itself, you can start using it. So we're going to put in 2 stacks of iron ore to test. It can be anything. And what's going to happen is very soon all of these furnaces are going to fire up. Give it a second. Sometimes it puts in the first 1 or 2 blocks unevenly, but the rest of the time it will then be distributed perfectly evenly between the furnaces. The reason for that is that the iron ore spreads 1 each into this line of hoppers going across here until it reaches the end. That causes that comparator to activate, which then turns this redstone signal off. Each time that happens, 1 input goes into each of these furnaces. And so that's going to continue until this chest becomes empty. When that happens, this comparator is going to turn off. It's just happened now, causing that redstone signal to turn on, which then causes this system, which controls the input, to turn off. This is important so that you actually get back everything that you put into the super-smelter, otherwise it would retain some of the input. I'll show the design this is based off now. That's just over here. It's very similar. It's got all the chests, all the hoppers and all the furnaces in exactly the same place. It's also got the same system for regulating the input. How it differs is that it hasn't got the comparator coming from the input chest. It's instead got a comparator at the end of the hoppers that introduce fuel into the system, which then cause the well, it's exactly the same as this side basically, and as you can imagine, that causes the fuel to be distributed between the furnaces in the same way as the input is. This has an advantage in that you can start using it immediately. I can put some coal in and I don't have to wait for it to completely fill up. I can just put some iron ore in and it will start working. Disadvantages of that is when it comes to fuel, you have to be careful not to put in too much. It's kind of the opposite problem, because if you do, what's going to happen is that the furnace first of all will get full up with fuel, then this hopper leading into the furnace will get full up, then when that happens, this hopper here will always have some fuel in it, which will then turn this redstone permanently off, which will mean that all the fuel will then start getting dumped into the first available space. So that's not ideal. So you'd have to keep an eye on the amount of fuel in there by looking in the furnaces every now and then. The other problem, which we'll find in a second once this is actually finished doing everything, I think it's maybe just about done everything. It's put it all into the furnaces. Yeah, you only get 60 back. The reason is that it only processes in multiples of 15, or however many furnaces that you've got in this. 15 is the most, and the rest will be retained in these hoppers, one in each, that one and that one as well, until the next time you put something into process. Then you'll get it back. In contrast though, if we go back to this one and check the output chest, both of those stacks have completely processed. Nothing's left in the system. All of the furnaces are still completely full of fuel, and we'll see how much fuel that's used up. Just a little bit there. So all we'd have to do is top this up, and well, I mean, you don't have to top it up immediately. You could use some more fuel first, but I think you get the idea. Just very quickly, I would recommend this design, the one that I based it from, if you want it just as a temporary feature. Like you're doing a big build somewhere, you need something to process lots and lots of things at once, because you can start using it immediately. Also, when you deconstruct it again, you won't be picking up, a ridiculous amount of fuel. But the drawbacks will probably make this a less attractive choice for a base or anywhere you want to have this permanently installed. So I hope you found this useful. I hope you get something from it, and I hope you keep on enjoying the game. Take care.